Hi, I'm Lewis Adams, and welcome to Local Chats. A family's bond is one of the strongest there is, but is it enough to survive lies, anger, and deceit? Mothers, brothers, friends, foes, loves, losses, temptations, woes. That quote was taken from a Tribe Youth Theatre Facebook post plugging their upcoming production of Willie Russell's Blood Brothers. I caught up with director Tom Moore to chat about the production, but we also touch on topics like Dungeons and Dragons and some of the mental health benefits of different social creative pursuits. Hello, Tom Moore.
Hello, Lewis Adams. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing very well. A little bit tired. It's been quite a busy week.
Well, you got a bit going on, including one of the things we're going to talk about, Blood Brothers. But before we get to that, give me a bit of background about yourself, please.
I'm Bendigo born and raised. Spent a little bit of time in Melbourne, but I've lived here most of my life. I come from a very, admittedly very talented family, but a very strong creative family, which has led me to a lot of different areas in my life. So as we know each other, I am a writer, poet, novelist, non-fiction writer, all sorts. And as we are going to be talking about quite a bit today, I am very involved in local theatre. In all aspects of that, from performing to directing to stage and production management and assistant directing, and I even did a little bit of sound tech work last year, which was quite interesting. So that's who I am. I am a writer, performer, director, singer, Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master.
Aren't we all?
Yes. There should be more of those folks.
This is completely unrelated and tangential, but something that I have heard that a lot of local sort of role-playing communities have an issue with is that they don't, also from an organised perspective, they don't have enough DMs.
Well, it's not what I'm really here to talk about, but it's an interesting thing that you bring up. Last year, I approached Headspace Mental Health Care Services in Bendigo about creating a Dungeons and Dragons group for them, for their clients. And we have actually been running for a full year now.
Oh, fantastic.
Running weekly games where we take people who have a little bit of experience, a lot of experience, or no experience at all, and teach them how to play the game, but also give them the skills necessary to start their own groups. And I have heard that at least 2 of the regular members have started their own play groups with other friends of theirs.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so it's a great experience. It's a great event. We're no longer at Headspace currently. We moved out of the Headspace offices at the end of last year. We're now out of Yo Bendigo on Mundy Street, the YMCA. Mondays from 4 till 6. It's typically 4 till 7. But yeah, it's a great event. But that's sort of something else that I've been doing recently as well.
Cool, and I think that is important enough. We'll move on to Blood Brothers very soon, but I think that is important enough. If people want to get involved, aside from I guess showing up at that time, what's their best way online to try and get in touch?
Just showing up on a Monday.
Just showing up on a Monday.
It's not that formal. But it kind of comes around to Blood Brothers, I suppose, in a way, because one of the reasons why I love the game so much is also one of the reasons why I love local theatre so much. One of the strongest things I've ever thought that a person can do for themselves is to be creatively engaged with something. And more importantly, to be able to be creatively engaged with something in a cooperative or collective environment. You and I are both part of the Right Stuff local writers group, which is another fabulous example of engaging in a community with a community-driven focus in a creative way is one of the strongest things I think a person can do for managing anxiety or building self-confidence or even just building problem-solving skills. These are incredibly powerful tools that a person can have. And theatre is one way of doing it. Role-playing games are another. Whatever you find that is more beneficial to you is all the power to you.
I guess taking control of an aspect of your life, which I guess a lot of people who might have their own personal difficulties, whatever they might be, might not feel like they're in control in the rest of their life.
Being in control is one big side of it, but also being aware of yourself and your surroundings is another really big one. And this is especially true for theatre because, particularly when we talk about Blood Brothers, which we should get to in a second.
We've been name dropping it a bit, so I think we're starting to.
We have, yeah. Blood Brothers is a fabulous show. It's endlessly entertaining, but it's not comical. There may be a few laughs in it, but it is a very serious story. And not many of the characters necessarily would be considered to be in control of their environment. But for the actors themselves, I feel, knowing that endpoint and being able to exist within that space and feel comfortable with your cast around you, I think is just as important as in another environment where you are creatively engaging, sort of improvisationally, having that kind of control. Both are very useful. There's that comfort or control either way. It comes down to how you engage with what you're doing and the people around you.
Tell me more about Blood Brothers.
Okay, so Blood Brothers was written by English playwright and singer-songwriter Willie Russell. He wrote it in 1981, I believe, for a school in Merseyside, and it was then adapted into a full-length play which opened on the West End in London in 1983. It was then adapted further into a musical and sort of the story updated a little bit. What we're doing is the full version of the story as a play. We're not doing the musical. It's not to say there isn't any music in it, but we're doing the play. It's about 90 minutes from start to finish. As a story, it's quite a intricate and interesting one. So it focuses around the life of two young boys. It actually starts shortly before they're born, with their mother, Mrs. Johnson, who is a working class woman. This is about late 1950s, early 1960s. And she has 7 children, and she can barely take care of them as it is. She finds out she's pregnant again. She's just on the cusp of destitution at this point. And then she discovers she's having twins. And that second child would ruin her, basically. And so while she loves her children and she knows she's going to love these 2 boys as well, she's unsure as to how she's going to live. And that's when she is offered a way out. She works at the moment as a cleaner for a wealthy woman in Liverpool, the name of Mrs. Lyons. Mrs. Lyons offers to purchase one of the boys, because Mrs. Lyons can't have children of her own. And while Mrs. Johnson is reticent to do that, she's eventually convinced that that's what's best for the boys, because with 8 kids she can manage, with 9 she can't, and the boy that she gives up will live a relative life of luxury. However, Mrs. Lyons turns out to be quite a paranoid woman in the end, and she is concerned that if her child, Eddie, the other child that Mrs. Johnson keeps is named Mickey, if Eddie finds out that Mrs. Lyons is not his birth mother, he will leave her. And so she tries to get rid of Mrs. Johnson by firing her. And when Mrs. Johnson tries to take Eddie back, Mrs. Lyons preys upon Mrs. Johnson's superstition and makes her believe that if the 2 boys ever find out that they were brothers and then parted, that they would die. That's sort of the beginning premise of the story. And then we then follow Mickey and Eddie as they grow up. The next time we see them, they're 7 years old, and they don't know about each other. They don't know who the other exists. But then they meet, and they become best friends instantly. And despite their 2 mothers trying to keep them apart, these 2 boys want to be around each other, and they form a bond in blood. They are themselves blood brothers. They cut their hands and hold their palms together, and they are bonded in blood. And so as they grow up, the 2 boys remain good friends. They've got Mickey's childhood sweetheart, Linda, is the 3rd part of their trio, and they just are together for years and years and years. And then as they grow up, as they get into their adulthood, everything starts to go awry. Mickey is still a poor working class boy. Eddie is still a rich upper class boy, despite their relationship to one another. And so when Eddie goes away to university, Mickey loses his job. And when the 2 boys reunite once again, it's not the same. Mickey just doesn't want to be reminded of the fact that he once had a better life. And Eddie is that reminder. And so when things get more complicated, more awkward, and eventually come to a head at the climax of the story, which I will not ruin, but it's very powerful.
Well, there's so many sort of interesting themes just in your spiel just now that am pretty excited to to see
there are very
to
strong
explore.
themes of class and sexism and superstition, paranoia, guilt. One character in particular who sort of frames the story, the narrator basically, is not simply narrating the story from an outsider's point of view. He quite often appears on stage as a representation of the guilt and paranoia of the women, the two mothers, and basically directs his narrations at them specifically. It's all very, very powerful stuff, and the actors are just incredible. That is actually another thing I wanted to bring up. So this is being done by Tribe Youth Theatre, which is a sister theatre company to the Bendigo Theatre Company. And Tribe focuses on high school aged performers. They bring in people from age 13 to 19. And so that's the age range of the performers doing this show. I would not trade them for anything. They are absolutely incredible. I am always constantly blown away by how well they are able to bring over how moving and emotionally intense this story can get in the way I would pay professional prices to see.
Tell me a bit about the behind the scenes and your sort of experience with this particular production.
My experience with this production actually goes back a little bit before it started. I saw Tribe's first show in 2017. They did Barnum, the musical, and I fell in love, not just with the company in terms of their production, but their ethos as well. Their whole idea, coming back to what I was saying earlier, is not just about doing shows with young people, but specifically about getting young people into the production side of things as well. It's a training opportunity for people to get involved in theatre for their entire lives, which is so powerful. And that even comes into why they're called Tribe, is because it is supposed to be creating this family of theatre. So the next show that they did, which was an adaptation of Terry Pratchett's Weird Sisters, I knew I had to be involved. I was the assistant director for that. And I was then in Tribe's next show, which was Grease, which was last year. I was their sound engineer. When Grease finished, I was then called into a meeting with the Tribe production, Tribe committee, and they told me that they wanted to do Blood Brothers and they wanted me to direct it, which was a massive, massive compliment, both in terms of how much my investment into the company had been recognised, but also a recognition of the skills I have available. That is one of the other things to think about with Blood Brothers, is because it's set in Liverpool, there is a lot of very strong accent work, which is something that I put a lot of focus on. With that, the very next step was orchestrating an information evening to get cast involved, putting out feelers for people to get involved as a stage manager. We've got a young stage manager, we've got a young set designer, we've got a young props master, all these people who are either at the Tribe's deliberate focused age range or just above, who are all getting the training they need to continue doing these jobs in professional shows if they would like to. That's kind of where it all started.
Easy to forget if you're outside of any theatre company is that they're not just the performers you see on the stage.
Yeah, and particularly with this show is we're performing at the fire station, the engine room, which is a very intimate and direct performance space, which is fabulous for the short distance between the audience and the actors on stage. Does mean we don't have a lot of backstage room. So a lot of this is very, very intricately coordinated to ensure that everything happens on stage the way it's supposed to, while only having a small amount of side stage and very, very little space backstage to move anything around. So the skills and talents that we are able to bring out is not just with our performers, but with our technical crew and our props and sets, smiths and designers. sets in particular is something I'm very excited about because it was a design of my own. It's a very mobile set. It moves around the stage all the way through the show.
Oh, nice.
And it was an interesting process as we talked to our designer and we talked to the various people we know who can create those sorts of things, and went through a couple of different iterations and getting it in. Now we have the pieces. It's about choreographing their movements and getting the cast used to moving them around. So it's a very technically intricate show as well. But the main thing is that with the play version of Blood Brothers, it's 90 minutes straight through. It doesn't have an interval. And part of that is that there's no explicit scene breaks. While there are scenes in our script, they just transition from one to the other. There's no hard lines. This scene ends, this next scene starts. They flow. And so I wanted to be able to pull that off the page and actually create that flow on the stage itself. And so our set design and our choreography of the movement of our chorus and our cast members is all based on trying to elicit a constant sense of movement.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot of fun because
Yeah.
it helps us keep it all in time, but also it means the 2 or 3 occasions where everything does fall still are extremely powerful. And even if the audience aren't looking for something like that, they will feel it, they will notice it, and they will love it.
That extra level of design that's being going into this production, just keeping that flow going. Because I was a little bit surprised when you mentioned that there is no interval in the between, but it sounds like it works perfectly for this particular play.
Yeah. With everything sort of tightly nailed down to the 90 minutes, I don't think anyone will notice. I think they will get to the end of the show and go, wow, that was it, wasn't it? Explicitly, what I've said to the cast is my aim is that there should not be a dry eye in the house.
Okay. Wonderful. Can you tell me, for people who want to go to this, after hearing you talk about it, I really want to go.
You should, yes, definitely.
How can I go to this?
Opening night is Thursday, the 11th of April. Closes on the 17th, so we're only open for a week. There are 6 shows. There's a possibility for 8, but we're not really selling well enough at this point to get to 8, so I would love to see enough tickets sales to open up 2 new shows. Tickets are available online through the Capital Venues and Events website or through Gotix, GOTIX.com.au, which I think is just a URL shortener for the Capital Venues and Events anyway. So gotix.com.au, find Blood Brothers in April, and tickets are between $24 and $32. I think it's $32 for adults and $24 for children. That being said, wouldn't necessarily recommend children for this show. There is some strong language, very strong themes. If you think your children can handle it, amazing. If not, might be a time for a babysitter.
Have you put any thought into what you're moving on to after this?
After Blood Brothers finishes, there'll be a bit of a gap, but the next thing to start up, I believe, will be Wicked. Stephen Schwartz's musical Wicked.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so we have a production team already in place for that. That's the Bendigo Theatre Company. I will be auditioning 100%. I very much hope to get in, but if not, then there's always new projects to start. And even if no one else has anything else going on, the Bendigo Theatre Company is always open to submissions. So if someone wants to put together their own show, the company can consider your proposal.
You've segued kind of into my next question. If you want to get involved in Bendigo Theatre Company, or if you fit the demographic tribe, what can you do? Well, not you, because you're already involved, but what can somebody who is not you, who
What
is not
can a
involved,
person do? The best ways, if you have Facebook, is to get on the Bendigo Theatre Company and Bendigo Theatre Company Tribe Facebook pages, because they do all the announcement and all the marketing starts there for Tribe and BTC shows. And generally speaking, when a new show is getting ready to start, there will be an information evening held at the BTC's rehearsal venue, The Shed on Allingham Street. And the information evening will go through all the details of what the shows are about, who the production teams are, and when auditions are, etc. And even if you're not interested in being a performer, that's where you also get to meet the production team and put your name down for backstage crew or any of the other technical roles. So the information evenings are pretty useful. They're not 100% necessary if you know anyone else within the company who can get you the audition information, but it is recommended you make it along to an information evening for a show when they happen.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure having a chat.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you very much.
Local Chats was produced by me, Lewis Adams. Theme music by Gawain Davey. Find more episodes online at localchats.com.au, at Local Chats on Facebook and Twitter. Bye!